another video! Arc 4 has been changing the course of Wings of Fire entirely, introducing what might be one of the craziest threats these dragons have faced. But with us merely at the beginning of what's about to be an epic saga, there's so much more to determine. WoP provides a prophecy at the start of every arc, and this one was no exception, despite it being given at a later point in the Hybrid Prince than any novel has ever gotten before. What exactly does the Forgotten Isles prophecy mean for the future of every dragon? Well, today I'll be breaking down this vision line for line, giving out theories and explanations so you can head into the next books with some very cool thoughts on your mind. But before we begin, a huge shout out to my patrons. Never95, Thistle, Noobto, Pyronuke, Avril, Pancake, Escrata, Adequin, Alice Cleaver, Moonclaw, Isaac, Iris, Mindtortoise9, Pantala Resident, Rise in the Furwing, Crystal, Phantom the Dragon, and Turtle the Seawing. Thank you all so much for supporting me. Links to their social medias are in the description down below. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the video. This will contain complete spoilers for the Hybrid Prince, so don't keep continuing on with the video until you've finished Book 16. If you already explored the adventures and mysteries of the Dungeon Isles, feel free to continue as I analyze this prophecy to make complete sense of it how we currently can. We didn't learn what was going on here until toward the end, though we're fed bits and pieces through Snakeroot's muttering. Tui opted to making the prophecy a surprise, not wanting to erase the uneasiness that would slowly settle in as we followed Umber, Sora, and others around a completely new land. And yeah, we need to bring up Snakeroot before discussing his words. One of the many twists in the Hybrid Prince involved the father of Mulberry, who served as king alongside his wife and queen, Beryl. They had forcefully taken the throne from the triumvirate of decision-makers, and ruled with fear and intimidation. Beryl is a full Skywing, but Snakeroot is actually a hybrid, despite us being made to believe at the start that he was only a Leafwing. This strange and fascinating king is a Leaf Knight, which is ultimately where his seer sight comes from. In fact, he's the long-distant ancestor of Queen Retribution, who ruled over the Nightwings so many thousands of years ago. Unlike majority of the other dragons on the Dungeon Isles, Snakeroot wasn't born there. At a very young age, he lost his Nightwing mother through unknown circumstances. His father, a Leafwing, brought him to the Court of Refuge. I'm so curious about how these two dragons met and fell in love. But for some reason, Snakeroot's father never told him the tribe his mother belonged to, making his powers a mystery until Umber pointed them out. Because of his hybrid status, his son Mulberry is actually a tribrid, resulting in the prince being a Sky Leaf Knight dragon. Some Nightwing abilities manifested in Mulberry as well, who seems to be able to sense and manipulate emotions. I think we're getting more of an expansion on empaths. Perhaps it's a sub-power only hybrids can get? Like, what if one of Snakeroot's relatives had Leaf Speak, so these two powers in his blood kind of combined into something a bit new for his descendants? I'll make a separate video all about Mulberry's strange empath skills. But for now, we're focusing on the king. Snakeroot incoherently mumbled the words of the Forgotten Isles prophecy throughout the novel, though little of it would make sense until later for us. So, now we have the context on who delivered this and what brought us to this point. It's time for me to read aloud the entire thing, and then go line by line to dissect what it really means, because this prophecy is way different than any we've gotten before, and I'll share why. Dragons lost and long forgotten, abandoned in the Sunlit Isle, ruled by power and betrayal, haunted by an ancient trial. Lines of blood will hold the key as danger threatens from the past, and when the claws are at his throat, the Hybrid Prince will rise at last. Who springs the trap, who saves the queens, and which of them is friend or foe? The smallest claws must choose the path to right a wrong from long ago. But is it wise and is it safe to break the curse, unleash the tide? What happens when the walls come down if something else was trapped inside? The first parts of this prophecy are the easiest, and you want to know why? It's because they've already happened. Weird that a vision would reveal so little instead of just focusing on what would come after. That's part of the reason I do think Tui may go down the 3 books in this storyline path she teases a possibility, and you can learn more about it in the previous video. Could all of this be a big misdirection? Maybe, but I'm not too sure, seeing as some of these lines are pretty specific and seem to obviously point to events from Book 16. Okay, though, there is quite a lot to unpack here, so we'll take it in segments. The dragons lost and long forgotten, abandoned in the Sunlit Isle, is obviously referring to the wild wings and other trapped characters stuck on the Dungeon Isles. Nobody knows about them, as the Queens of Imperia from so long ago didn't do anything to truly keep these stories alive. Nobody knows about the island, which is why dragons end up stuck there when they land. Your talons touching that ground is a sealing of fate. Ruled by power and betrayal is in reference to Beryl and Snakeroot's corruption, and how they took the throne and betrayed the triumvirate to gain power. And it's true that they did hold strength when they made everyone stay under them, as they even worked to create an army. The triumvirate looked out for these two, and yet they were the ones who ended up crossed. Haunted by an ancient trial calls back to Precipice's spell, which showed the inmates of the island who were in that enchanted room her memories regarding the politics of past Pyria. The assassination of the Skywing Queen of the time, Falcon, was an event from so long ago that was still meant to haunt anybody stuck there, as a way of reliving the sins of either themselves or what was meant to be their recent relatives. Lines of Blood will hold the key as danger threatens from the past, continues this thought, and would have helped Umber figure out that blood is what allows additional memories to be shown in this space. It's ultimately a metal sharpening who reveals this to our characters, allowing them to learn what they need to know to free themselves later. The second half of this is a little muddier, vague, and seems less connected, but I think it's calling to the end of the prophecy. And when the claws are at his throat, the hybrid prince will rise at last. Okay, this one you might have thought already happened at the end of Book 16, but I'm going to confidently say it did not. That's right, we're heading into uncharted territory here. Why do I think this? Well, not only would it be a crazy plot twist, one I theorized about all the way back during my first reading of the novel, but Tui herself also told us in a recent podcast. Again, my previous news drop has more info, but Mulberry is not definitively the hybrid prince mentioned in the prophecy. Yes, Taipan did hold him in this position, but Mulberry isn't the dragon who's meant to rise here. I mean, come on. That would be too easy. Just look at the name of the book. Would we really spell it out like that for us? And remember, Mulberry is a tribrid. So while Tui did confirm he's the royalty reference in the title, he doesn't have to be the prince specifically called out here. Which, to me, definitely means he's not. Though Mulberry will undoubtedly have a big role, don't worry. Who is this hybrid prince? We have a few possibilities. I think the likeliest is Peacemaker. If you've paid attention to Tui's comments over the years, this Night Rain Dragonette, once Darkstalker himself, is not fading into the obscurity and peace Moonwatcher saw in her battlefield vision. Rather, there's something in store for him. A while back, it was revealed that Peacemaker would have dreams that confused both him and his friends in this arc. With how many times Tui has brought up really wanting to add the next generation characters into the new plot, I think it's safe to say these new friends the hybrid prince may work with are the other young dragonettes, such as Auklet, Bumblebee, Cliff, and more. Peacemaker is a hybrid, and he's still a prince. His body just changed forms, and his memories are suppressed. I think it's fair to say he might remember his life as Darkstalker at some point, or at least bits of it. Though I'm certain his story will still end happily, as Moon predicted it would. I just don't feel like his or Hope's stories are done yet. Peacemaker's return would make so much sense, bridging the gaps between the old and the new when it comes to Waff. He's part of Ancient Imperia and the new generation simultaneously. He's the missing puzzle piece. How and why might he rise? Let's take a look into the next part of the prophecy. I think I can piece together it here soon. Who springs the trap, who saves the queen, and which of them is friend or foe? In the epilogue, all the queens but Jewel, Coral, and Moorhen suddenly vanish from their kingdoms without a trace. King Kaju was also in this disappearing group, despite not being royalty. And before some people say Jewel, Coral, and Moorhen could be gone too, I think they would have mentioned that. We spent so much time showing everybody else had vanished, there would have been room for 3 more characters. And no reason not to say it. It would have given us some page time for Umber's brothers too, who work for Moorhen now. There are many big mysteries. An obvious one is why and how these royal dragons disappeared. We also must wonder, as this prophecy brings up, who took them, and who will save them, confirming they're in danger. I will get back to who, or rather what, I think did this very soon. Just bear with me. But I want to point out how odd the "and which of them is friend or foe" line is. Are some of these queens bearing secrets? Because the only corrupt one we know that disappeared was Wasp, ex-ruler of the Hive Wings. There could be a traitor in the mix, but who? Is it really this queen, or is it possibly all a trick to divide them? We continue with, the smallest clause must choose the path to right or wrong from long ago. Clause is actually plural here, implying to us many dragons could be part of this. If it were singular, I'd chalk it all up to harmony. But no, there's more than one with the smallest clause. Sure, it could be the next generation dragonettes, but with the superlative, I just don't think this is their mention. I believe it might be Harmony and the late bloomer from the end of the Hybrid Prince. They'd be the youngest characters currently in the story, even with an eventual time skip. Is the wrong they hope to right connected to what we learned about with the corrupt queens of the ancient continent, or is there much more we have yet to learn? It seems too obvious to just be about the old trials, since we were told too much about them already. I actually think this specific wrong is something else. But is it wise and is it safe to break the curse, unleash the tide? As we learned at the end of the novel, Umber, Sora, and the others flew away from the dungeon aisles with Harmony's egg, and seemed to activate a sort of tripwire. Perhaps somebody invisible could have easily been holding on to them, ultimately receiving their freedom and slipping through the cracks. So, Umber and the rest were meant to question whether their own release from the dungeon aisles was worth somebody or something dangerous leaving with them. Unleash the tide is what I will tap into very soon, just you wait. We're approaching the end now. What happens when the walls come down is something else was trapped inside. Something, not someone, something trapped. Now, this is when I can stop being vague and just tell you everything. Okay, I have the ultimate theory on what I think is going on. Who took the queens? Who escaped from the island? And it's much bigger than you'd first realize. This character is also teased in the prophecy, but you may have missed it. This will blow your mind, so let me explain. I'm going to say it now. Waterfall. Waterfall, descendant of Fathom and Indigo, is the invisible threat our characters are currently after. She's who's behind all this, and here's my proof. I think I explained it pretty well, and excitedly, it was 2:30 a.m., in some voice notes with my friend. Here's some of that.
So, I think I know exactly who, or rather what, took the egg, and I am for sure certain I am right. I would bet money on it, okay? I'm gonna say it. It's the statue of Waterfall. I'm telling you this. What she did, I'm thinking that, I've been wondering, why did Waterfall go to the dungeon isle? What happened? What happened with her family? Was this gonna divide? Why'd she leave them? Why'd she leave her home? What if she's a bad guy? What if she isn't this nice, sweet Animus who helped make the island a better place? What if she's a bad guy? To some extent. So, obviously, Animus magic was involved in making the queens disappear, because how else would that have happened? But remember, Cherubbo the Third created a spell to stop Animus magic, but, she did take away the powers of Animus dragons, but, look at what she said. I hereby enchant this candle holder. When I shatter it, I share the power of all current Animus dragons. From now on, no new spells cast by any Animus dragon alive today will ever work again. Alive. Alive today. Well, a statue isn't stinking alive, is it? And maybe it could have had periods where it was dormant. So it would not have been alive on that day, right? I think maybe what Waterfall did was she either created a copy of herself or trapped herself in the statue to where, like, basically she would be there dormant for however long it would take so she could get her revenge on. I think there's something going on. I mean, I believe the Indigo, Fathom, stuff Powa, all that's important. Because why else would they introduce that? Of Powa, being a descendant of them. Why would they do that, right? It feels very weird, and all that Peacemaker stuff, Darkstalker again. I think that Darkstalker Legends reunion is coming, and we're going to be going back to the past to connect it to the present and the new generations, right? So, no one alive today. And then if you go back and you reread the epilogue, interesting wording surrounding this character. Let's see how they describe this dragon, right? Let's see. Night fell, the sounds of dragons in the distance faded as most of them went to sleep and others went night hunting. The halls were quiet, except for something breathing. Something that came through the door Umber had taken to find the Sharpwings. Something that slipped through the silent, deserted halls. Something that reached the door of the hatchery. A shadowy figure crept up to the nest. Gray talons closed around the egg. "I know you're in there," it whispered. "You're mine now." The massive shadow slithered away, taking the egg with it. The hatchery was left still and empty in the moonlight. Something. It. Figure. It's not a dragon, or not an alive dragon. And it's not a human either. This is a statue. It's Waterfall's statue, because why would they make such a big deal of showing us it, but also acting oddly casual about that detail? Of an animus living on the isle? Something's going on here. And, again, it is not, it's the statue, Waterfall. Because she has full animus magic then. Either it's like a clone of herself, kind of, or like, literally her, kind of like dormant in it, kind of like how Indigo was like in the wooden sculpture. It is the statue. I'm telling you, it's the statue. Because Jeroboam's spell, and then Darkstalker, with his spell of transporting the Animus Dragons, it was transport, like, every, what was it? Let me see if the wiki has, like, his exact... Bring them here. Every Animus Dragon and all the 7 tribes. Bring them here to my throne room right now. Well, a statue isn't a tribe, is it? It's stinking a statue. It's made of stone. It's not of the 7 tribes. And maybe Waterfall could have not been full Seawing too, but I think it's because she's a statue, right? She would not have come there. You're not going to teleport a stinking statue, right?
What my friend and I also went over is that if this isn't Waterfall's statue, it is definitely a ghost. A lot of these descriptions would match an apparition. It is missing this whole Tui T, although maybe the ghost could be of ancient Seawing descent. That's the only other possibility, and it makes sense with all the weird ghost talk lately. Albatross's ghost terrorizing the Seawings, Platypus being initially described as one, etc. Except this time it may actually be a true spirit, unable to reincarnate for some reason, thus making them the only true ghost. Watch my video on reincarnation, because I think it all connects. Waterfall may have uploaded her consciousness into the statue, activating after a period of dormancy when freedom was finally close. Like the spell in Fosler that put her into a state of non-existence until disturbed from the ice, or Indigo and Darkstalker trapped her in the wooden figurine. Hence why Waterfalls only breathes now, yet isn't truly alive. My friend also pointed out that this would be another evidence to Waff reincarnation, since Orca could have been the reincarnation of Waterfall, which is why they had a similar idea with the animated statues. This whole mention of a tide in the prophecy just harkens back to water, and not just the kind surrounding the isle. So, this has been my breakdown in Theory Fest when it comes to Snakeroot's vision. There are still answers I cannot give, but I think I've cracked a good majority of this. That's your tip for this video. How do you expect Harmony, the bad egg, and everything else to turn out? Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!